let's step back.
The news is unfolding at a breakneck pace on the national level, and we get renowned historian and professor Heather Cox Richardson's take on several things we've never seen before. Closer to home, state and local governments press on with essential work. FoodLink partners with a local high school to distribute delicious prepared meals throughout the area. And Arlington gets ready for one of its most powerful annual events. All this and more up next.
From McLennan Park to Spy Pond, from Poets Corner to the Mystic River, we have Arlington covered. We're your neighbors, a friend you can turn to. This is ACMi News.
Hello, Arlington, and welcome to ACMi News. I'm Isabel Litterst. As of January 1st, the minimum wage in Massachusetts officially increased to $13.50. This is a win for workers, but maybe not for small business owners. ACMi News reporter Maxim Isaac explains why.
New year, new minimum wage. Some Massachusetts residents will start 2021 with the prospect of more money in their pockets.
That's right, some residents are getting a pay bump. The minimum wage will now increase to $13.50, with more increases to come.
Is a significant increase if you're making that amount of money. It can mean, you don't have to choose between things like heat and food or paying the cable bill. But it certainly doesn't help anybody live too large, even at that level.
Back in 2018, Governor Charlie Baker signed a bill that would gradually raise the Commonwealth's minimum wage to $15 by 2023.
The federal minimum wage has been stuck at around $7 and change an hour for a long time, and that's just nowhere near enough for a family to live on. So it's up to the states to adjust their policies.
Tipped employees, such as restaurant servers, will also see an increase to their hourly wage, up to $5.55 per hour. Meanwhile, retail establishments will have to decrease their usual time and a half offered on Sundays and holidays to compensate for increased expenses.
When you hit $15 an hour, that would mean on Sundays, some businesses would be forced to pay $23.50 an hour to their workers. And a lot of small businesses can't afford that then, and certainly can't afford that now. And what would happen is that those businesses just wouldn't open on those days. And it would put smaller employers at a competitive disadvantage with the big box shops that may be able to afford that and stay open. So it was going to be something that really hurt small businesses.
With the pandemic still ongoing, Christopher Carlozzi worries that this new law is yet another challenge for small businesses in the state to deal with.
In Massachusetts, for a small business right now, there's a lot coming at them at once in 2021, and we need to be doing everything possible to lower costs for them to operate, not increase them, because we don't want to see dark storefronts when this pandemic finally ends and when people are back out participating in the economy.
Next year, the minimum wage will increase to $14.25 and $6.15 for tipped employees. For ACMi News, I'm Maxim Isaac.
Thank you, Maxim. The Culinary program at a regional vocational high school has partnered with a local nonprofit to salvage food waste and turn it into delicacies for area families to enjoy. Senior news producer Nima Osmani has the story.
FoodLink, the community-based organization from Arlington, has been rescuing food waste and getting it to thousands of families in Massachusetts. FoodLink has about 50 community partnerships in the eastern region of Mass, but a recent and new partnership with the local regional technical school provides greater food salvation and a new experience for both FoodLink and the students involved.
Our mission is to increase environmental sustainability and alleviate hunger by matching food that would otherwise be wasted to nonprofits and community organizations throughout eastern Massachusetts who need it. Minuteman's fit into that by helping to take some of this rescued food and prepare it into really wonderful meals that we distribute to our recipient agencies, and those recipient agencies get them to food insecure individuals who are really happy to get them.
At a time when food insecurity is rising, especially in the midst of a global pandemic, Minuteman Regional High School's Culinary program provides a new partner for FoodLink in its goal to distribute food to those in need. This program also benefits culinary students who get the chance to refine their cooking skills while doing good.
I was approached by our culinary staff department with going into a much different school year. They were looking at ways to keep our culinary students engaged during the school day, and we decided to partner with FoodLink. We've been able to turn out over 800 meals a month, kind of changing our business model of not having our customers come into our restaurant. We're able to reach out to communities and help other families in need using the skills that our students have in the culinary arts department.
Minuteman High School has a fully functional student-run restaurant that's open to the public under normal circumstances, but because of the pandemic, no customers are allowed to dine in other than staff members. Anita Courier, the chef hospitality instructor, thought of the idea to utilize the students' skills to keep them academically productive for a greater cause.
We discovered our partnership over the last spring when we saw that this year was going to be a very different year. So we wanted to engage our students in something that was authentic and meaningful that helps them practice their skills. So we cook. FoodLink brings us food every Monday. They're recovered ingredients, and we kind of look at what that surprise box looks like. FoodLink comes and picks it up. So on Monday they bring us their recovered ingredients, and on that same day we give them 100 meals. So they take about 100 meals, and also the Lexington Food Pantry takes another 100 meals. So we do a minimum of 200 meals a week, but generally more.
The food is portioned out, prepared by students, and then packaged for FoodLink to pick up and distribute. Students produce 200 meals a week that get sent out to families in need and the local food pantry. Preparing food for families has become a major part of the culinary curriculum at Minuteman High.
I'd say more than half of what we're doing now is dedicated to FoodLink. And with the different ingredients that they're bringing us are things we might not have necessarily introduced to the students. If the students see a unique ingredient or something that FoodLink has donated to us, it's just a plus for them because it would normally be something we may not have thought of using. We're very happy to do it. We're humbled to do it because it's meaningful. It's it helps out the community quite a bit.
Charlie Schreiber, a sophomore at Minuteman High from Arlington, is grateful for the opportunity to continue to do what he loves.
It feels really great. I love cooking for other people. It's absolutely great. It's just the satisfaction that you get from hearing that people love something that you made, something that you did, and it was a really great partnership in my opinion, because like we get the skills of cooking the food, and then the people obviously get the food themselves, and it was just a really great idea.
For the time being, Minuteman Regional High School is the only high school program that is partnered with FoodLink, blazing a trail for other culinary programs to follow.
It's been a great partnership. We get about, we directly take about 400 meals a month, and then we've brokered so that the Lexington Food Pantry gets another 400 meals. And this is just a really, the word I want to use in a way is wholesome partnership.
Since the start of the pandemic, FoodLink has distributed about 1.2 million pounds of food that reaches tens of thousands of families across the region. They hope the partnership with Minuteman High School will be just the first of many such collaborations. For ACMi News, I'm Anim Osmani.
Arlington, this week has been anything but normal. In an ACMi exclusive interview with Dr. Heather Cox Richardson, she helps us to digest the unprecedented events of this past week and put them into historical context. Dr. Richardson is a lauded historian of American history and the author of the bestseller, How the South Won the Civil War. She also writes an increasingly popular daily newsletter called Letters from an American, for which the New York Times recently called her the most successful independent journalist in America. On top of all of that, Dr. Richardson is a professor of history at Boston College, and it was my pleasure to be a student in her class. Here's a short clip from our conversation.
Dr. Richardson, thank you so much for joining me today to share your perspective on current affairs and a historical perspective on what's going on today. It's great to see you again.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. Let's step back for a minute. For the first time in our history, armed insurrectionists mobbed the United States Capitol where our Congress was meeting to count the votes the certified votes in a presidential election. They came within a minute of breaking into the Senate and holding our elected representatives hostage at best, and they had erected a gallows outside. This is the most profound attack on our electoral system in our history. What will Trump's legacy be? Will he be the first president, certainly the first president impeached twice, but will he be the first president convicted of insurrection? Or will he be the first president to have established an autocracy and to pass the presidency on to his offspring? Until we know that, we won't really know what this legacy is. But from where we sit at this moment today, and I will emphasize that things are changing every second, Trump, I think, is the end of an era. It feels to me, as somebody who's observing the larger sweep of American political parties, he is the rock on which the post-World War II Ronald Reagan era Republican Party has broken. And it's going to have to emerge either as an autocratic party, or it's going to split back into the fringe movement conservatives and a more traditional Republican Party. And if that happens, if we get a more traditional Republican Party, we will get what we had after World War II, with both a Republican Party and a Democratic Party sharing the values of liberalism, small L liberalism, the idea that the government has a role to play, regulating business, providing a basic social safety net, and investing in infrastructure. And that, after all, is what most Americans want. It's just in the past, Republicans and Democrats looked at that in slightly different ways, and they argued about it. Since you had this wrecking ball of the movement conservatives coming in and rejecting that kind of a government altogether, our government really has been paralyzed. And if we really do that break now, we could see a much more functional government that is much more responsive to America, the same way we did after similar crises in the 1850s, the 1890s, and the 1920s. If that doesn't happen, we'll go full autocracy, but I basically don't see that happening.
Do you see him as being remembered as the worst president in history?
Yes, but not because he's exhausting. There are plenty of things that have been hugely problematic in his administration, but there are two that have seemed to me to have vaulted him to that or dropped him to that status. And the first, as you say, is coronavirus. He could not have stopped that from coming to America, for sure, but there's absolutely no reason that we should be leading the world in deaths, and this disaster did not have to happen. But then, in addition to that, of course, we have the January 6th insurrection, and that on anybody's watch would have been a defining moment that dropped you to the bottom of the pack. At that moment, Congress was meeting to count the votes, the certified votes for the 2020 election. And what that meant was that the three next people in line for the presidency after Donald Trump were in that building. And the insurgents came within a minute of getting their hands on those people. It's hard to imagine that this was going to end well had they gotten their hands on our elected representatives. We came so close to the worst day in American history within a minute of it. That's one that we will be digesting for a very long time. And those two things together, either one of them would have been enough to put Trump at the bottom of our presidential scale, but taken together, the only good thing I can see coming out of this is that Americans have woken up to the idea that who sits in the Oval Office really matters, and maybe we'll be more careful in the future about who we put there.
As you can tell, it was a fascinating conversation with Dr. Richardson. You can find the full interview on our website at acmi.tv/news. There's important news coming out of the State House pushing Massachusetts healthcare to the next level. Governor Baker has just signed a new bill that will expand telehealth coverage, protect Mass residents from surprise billing, and provide more insurance coverage for COVID-19 testing and treatment, among other things. ACMi's In-Young Kim spoke to our state senator, Cindy Friedman, one of the principal architects of this landmark healthcare legislation.
As this new year opens, healthcare legislation has come out of the State House that promises to reduce some burdens that residents have had to endure in the pandemic. On January 1st, Governor Baker signed a new healthcare law that increases access to affordable care, promotes telehealth services, and protects consumers from surprising medical bills. The law extends insurance coverage in Massachusetts to cover COVID-19 testing and treatment. The legislation also allows MassHealth members easier access to urgent care sites without referral requirements, and it expands the scope of practice for advanced practice nurses. State Senator Cindy Friedman, who worked hard to pass the bill, joined ACMi to describe the impacts of the new law.
New provisions for COVID-19 is it requires all treatment of COVID-19, inpatient and outpatient, so no copays and deductibles, anything that is a result of contracting the virus. It also expands access to testing, coverage of testing, even for people who are asymptomatic.
The new law also mandates that telehealth sessions be covered at the same rate as in-person treatment, even after the pandemic, which is an important change.
Telehealth will have a huge impact on Arlington because that will allow people in Arlington to get access. In the behavioral health space, before we required telehealth to be accessible and covered, there was a no-show rate in the behavioral health space, people not showing up for their appointments. It was a huge number. Since telehealth, that number's gone down to less than 5%. So that means that people are getting the connection to their providers that they need. Scope of practice will provide more access to providers, and that will have an impact. And then I think the out-of-network will be very, very significant for the community.
Senator Friedman acknowledges that there is still plenty of work to be done in the area of healthcare and cites a few major issues that must be tackled.
We need to take the next step in out-of-network. We have to address the high cost of pharmaceuticals, and we have to engage the pharmaceutical industry in helping us solve that problem. And then I think another big piece is behavioral health. How do we increase the workforce so that behavioral health gets more focus and also people have more access?
As the pandemic continues to create stress and anxiety for all of us, we are happy to share a little good news, and we hope to have more to share in the future. For ACMi News, I'm In-young Kim.
Thank you, In-young. Few occasions on the town's yearly calendar are as anticipated and as moving to experience as the Martin Luther King Commemoration that takes place each January. The pandemic has, of course, altered the contours of this year's event on January 18th, but will take away none of its power, as the town's Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Jillian Harvey, tells us.
Basically, we're trying to replicate the way the program works. So all of the main components that you would have live, we try to do in a virtual setting. So there'll be, an opening, the invocation. There will be a free will offering. No baskets will physically be going around, but donations are always welcome either by check or online. They've got a fund set up that way. We'll also hear from Dr. Mikkel Thatcher, who's going to do the Master of Ceremonies. We've got our musical performances. It's not going to be the same. You won't really feel it the way you do in person, but those are still planned. The same chorus that always comes, the Brotherhood Chorus from Concord Baptist Church. They've done some recordings for this event and they're great. We'll also, instead of having a keynote speaker, it'll be an interview. So Crystal Haynes, who is a member of the Human Rights Commission, is going to be in conversation with Kirsten Greenwich, who's an acclaimed playwright and Arlington native. So they're going to have a great discussion, which will be fruitful. And from there, the program will continue in its normal fashion. We'll hear from Paul White, who will sing Lift Every Voice and Sing. And we'll still have the benediction, followed by the closing remarks. So All of the components are there. It'll just be a little bit different because everyone won't be in the same room together, but hopefully everyone will be able to feel that vibe while viewing it from their homes safely.
You were able to attend last year's event, which was, a normal one, as we love to say these days, right? And you got kind of a sense of what I was referring to before about the power of the immediacy of being there and of people coming together in this way. This is yet another sacrifice and accommodation to the pandemic. How has this kind of accommodation been for you?
I mean, it's definitely different after attending last year's event. I was excited for the next one and to try and participate in planning. And I did get that opportunity as well. So I'm really grateful for that. It's going to be different. I've actually carved out time for myself, which is something I'm trying to do in this new year.
Good resolution.
Yes. But
hopefully it lasts longer than most of our resolutions.
I hope so. I hope it's going to last a year. But I've actually carved out some time Monday for myself to really just sit and do some reflecting. I've been doing this work and, people kind of, at least I feel that folks take time for certain holidays and whatnot to do that reflective moment. But when you're in it pretty much all of the time, especially in the role that I'm in, I feel like I've somewhat not distanced myself, but put up almost mental blocks, because in order to get through my work, which is consistently having difficult conversations and talking about race, I'm not really, taking in why I'm doing this, because it becomes so repetitive. And I always become numb to the things going around us, which isn't great. And so Monday, I plan to kind of do my own self-reflective time and how I can really more channel the vibes of our civil rights leaders. So that's my plan. And I plan to cap it off with this event by watching it.
And now a couple pieces of good news for Arlington residents. First, the Department of Planning and Community Development announced that town residents' participation in the U.S. Census surpassed expectations. The town enjoyed an impressive self-response rate of 82.6%, nearly a 5% increase from the 2010 census. The Census Bureau can now account for 99.9% of the town's population. This is all thanks to the mobilization of various Arlington groups and the civic engagement of Arlingtonians in general. For more information, you can visit the town website. This past week, Arlington High School was the site of Arlington's very first COVID-19 vaccination clinic, covering first responders from Arlington, Lexington, Belmont, and Watertown. From January 12th through 14th, approximately 600 first responders received their first dose. The Arlington Department of Health and Human Services released a statement saying, "We're not done yet, but we see a light at the end of the tunnel." And now we turn to our PonderScope crew to bring us up to speed on what's happening at Arlington High School.
Welcome to the PonderScope, your Arlington High School news, updates, and more. From now until February 10th, the GSA are selling t-shirts designed by AHS's Anna Hornack. Shirts are $20 and proceeds will go to the Transgender Emergency Fund of Massachusetts. To buy a shirt, click the link below before it's too late. Do you want to get your driver's license but haven't started the process yet? Well, there are still a few spots available in the CS February Driving Intensive. The link to sign up is on the Daily Post, so don't miss it. The submission form for Citizen of the Month is open on the Daily Post, so keep your eyes open for potential candidates that exhibit genuine care for the school as a community, take pride in and show enthusiasm for what they do, demonstrate kindness towards their peers, and spreads positivity while extinguishing negativity. Over the last 2 editions of the PonderScope, we have had 2 excellent new members on our team. If you're interested in joining the PonderScope family or ACMi in any capacity, email the youth coordinator at kevin@acmi.com. I'm Chandler Betts, and this has been the PonderScope. Now, and I have missed saying this, kicking it over to Nick for the sports update. Nick?
How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to yet another edition of the ACMi Sports Update. Let's start off today's update by heading to the court, where the boys varsity basketball squad was on the road to take on Melrose, where they were able to win their second straight by a score of 70-60. And the girls were on the court at home to take on Woburn, where they also won by a score of 48-30. Last but not least for action this week, the girls varsity hockey squad were at home to take on their rivals in Lexington this past Wednesday, where they absolutely destroyed the Minutemen by a score of 11-1.
It drops back to Doherty, who has some space now in front. Doherty takes a shot, and she scores. Nice move there by Doherty.
Now, with last week's matchups covered, let's look ahead to next week's matchups. On Saturday, girls basketball is at home to take on Lexington at 12. Boys basketball heads to Lexington to take on the Minutemen at 12:30. Then on Martin Luther King Day, girls basketball is on the road to face Lexington at 11:30. Girls hockey heads to Lexington for a battle at 10 a.m. And boys basketball is at home to take on Lexington at 1. Last but not least, boys hockey returns home on Wednesday to take on Winchester at 6. And make sure to head over to ACMi Sports on YouTube and subscribe to check out all the home varsity games live. From ACMi Sports, my name is Nick Antonakis. We'll see you back here next week.
Once again, thank you to our Studio B high school crew for keeping us up to date. It's been quite a week, Arlington, and I thank you for joining us this evening for our Week in Review. For ACMi News, I'm Isabel Etterst.
You can always check out our latest segments and newscasts on the web at acmi.tv/news. And don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at ACMi News. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. You'll find us at youtube.com/ACMi News. If you have any news tips for us or wish to become a citizen journalist, we'd love to hear from you. Email us at news@acmi.tv or stop by ACMI Studio A at 85 Park Avenue.